Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Mark the Goblin King versus Tony Scaponi on Ruby Storm. These names are reversed. Sorry for that. We're getting this new setup figured out. So, of course, Ruby Storm is going to be on the left here as Chrome Mox and Prince Rite of Flame, one of the only uses of that card. And here we have Jessica's Will into Burning Wish. For a draw 7. So far, Tony using pretty much his entire hand. Mark going to see if that next 7 is as good. Of course, Tony may be able to just keep rolling here. Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, type of accelerant. Just fine. But worst case scenario, he did get a nice little mana advantage out of this. 3 mana on board. Going up a couple of cards and potentially giving Mark a garbage hand as you don't have any mulligan selection on that other 7. A Wasteland taking out the Ancient Tomb and passing. Mark also aware that this 7 may not be ideal. Certainly wasn't good enough to continue. Now a City of Traders into Ruby Medallion, and I'll tell you, this is a completely different deck with this artifact on board. All of the spells become actual playable Magic cards or insane Magic cards. Obviously, a card like Burning Wish at 1 mana, totally unreasonable. The cards like Seething Song now only cost 2 to produce 5, putting it on par with a card like Cabal Ritual. And now Bergie finding another Bergie. So it looks like going with the hammer side. Is that what it is? A hammer? Check during a pause in the action. Double Lion's Eye Diamond. LED so strong when you're playing from zones other than your hand. Playing from the graveyard, playing from exile. It's absolutely ridiculous. Fence grid not going to be needed in this matchup. And this is completely out of hand now. Jessica's Will is going to see 7 cards in Mark's hand so far. Only been able to play a couple of lands. This Echo right now, the path toward getting some more cards as it is right now. Actually enough to win. But very likely this draw 7 is going to be a nail in the coffin. But maybe not. That's part of the fun of Ruby Storm, is a lot of the lines are not deterministic. A lot of the time you are just bombing draw 7s and hoping to get there. And sometimes you'll drop it. Sometimes you'll whiff. I mean, you can just draw 7 lands. That is absolutely a thing that's possible in the deck. But I would not bet on it. The odds certainly Ruby Storm's favor here. And nothing really that Mark can draw into game 1 going to be of any relevance on this particular turn. Now, if things fumble, you could certainly wrap things up in a couple of turns, but that is a while versus a combo deck like this. Best case scenario, getting down a Goblin Lackey and then perhaps being able to swing the next turn and put in something like a Muxus that could lead to just winning the game. This has got to be one of the tougher matchups for Goblins, I would imagine. All combo decks are a unique challenge, but when you really don't have much of a vulnerability to the disruption that goblins can potentially provide. And here we go. Now we've got a Burning Wish finally, which finishes things with the tendrils for this mono red deck. You get Manamorphose, Mox Opal, plenty of ways to be able to generate that black mana as needed. And goblins, you know, as it usually does, finds itself with its back up against the wall for game 2. Can't get flustered by that. Gotta just have a sideboard that's ready to shore up some of these weaknesses and hope for that type of consistent draw and hope that Ruby Storm fumbles. All of those things have a chance of giving goblins victory. Really, goblins is a little bit like Burn in the sense that it does punish inconsistent draws. Like, it's gonna get there. Like, it's not like goblins is just gonna not do anything for a bunch of turns. It's going to goldfish reasonably well in terms of putting a clock on your opponent. And if Ruby Storm fumbles, absolutely goblins can close out a game in very short order. Yeah, it's a horn, not a hammer, for flavor reasons. And I suppose it would be really difficult to fumble from there anyways. The horn activated ability being discard a card to exile the top 2 of your library. You can play those this turn, so it'd have to be like the top 7 cards would be useless and the next 14. A lot to ask. Seems unlikely. Certainly is. Turn 1 Goblin Lackey, that's what you're looking for. Now, we could see a Burgie as a blocker. That is absolutely a possibility. The 3/3 for 3 is castable on the first turn with a soul land and an artifact like Lotus Petal or Chrome Mox. Might be welcome. This Ruby Storm is not known for its first turn wins. It is possible. That is not the majority of what this deck does. A Burning Wish imprinted. Able to cast another Burning Wish? No. To grab a... Was that a Faithless Looting? So perhaps a Echo already in hand? That was indeed a Faithless Looting. The Lackey tutors up, or puts in a Matron, which tutors up. I'm not sure why I can't recognize that goblin. We've got a Caracas. Yeah, I'm not sure what that goblin was. Sure, we will see as this unfolds. Would have been a lot worse for Ruby Storm. And it is Faithless Looting. The draw 2. Expect Echo to be going into the bin. If not, this hand may get easily overwhelmed. Of course, Echo, one of the potentially vulnerable cards versus goblins, as they do have the ability to play Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast, but not usually the type of card you're going to be excited to bring in versus a deck that only has those Echoes as a target. There's other draw 7s. Doesn't really shut off any of the particular lines. I'd much rather have cards like Thorn of Amethyst or even a Chalice. Now Lotus Petal. Building Storm here. LED. And there's our Echo. And Tony considering if he wants to conserve some of this blue mana. Going to. Saving 2 blue. Oh, and it gets shut down. Was that actually a Pyroblast? I was looking at the mana. I'm going to assume it was. Now we've got a Goblin Trashmaster, which I believe was the card earlier. That staff of his looked a bit more like a dragon or something. And Mog War Marshal teams up to just clear the board of artifacts. That Mog War Marshal living its glorious purpose, or dying for a glorious purpose, taking out all 3 artifacts. And now a miracle off the top, Reforge the Soul. What a matchup here. A serious clock on board. Tony's got a couple of turns. He just had a huge setback, losing all of those artifacts, but Reforge the Soul, potentially bailing him out, potentially giving Mark just way too much ammunition. There's a Rashadan Port, which is going to tap down this Ancient Tomb in all likelihood, if the mana can't be used for something more destructive on Mark's side. Got a Burning Wish. Got a Chain Lightning, takes out the Trash Master. No red to bounce it back. But a really dangerous situation still. Wasteland, taking out the Ancient Tomb. Free combat. Perhaps indicating that there's not going to be any randomness in this turn. Not a lot of reason to use that. If it could be used towards something else, for example, if you're going to play a Ringleader or a Muxus, for example, you may end up having a unexpected use for mana. Now, Mog War Marshal coming in off of Lackey, and a Skirk Prospector could allow for some interesting lines. At the very least, this War Marshal can be sacrificed just to get the red. Likely best have the extra body. Oh, another Lackey. And a Goblin being sacrificed to tap down a Mountain, keeping the Caracas open to handle Bergie if she does happen to arrive. Ruby Medallion. Get a 2-turn clock here. All likelihood. Ever Goblins enter in here. Oh, and we've got a double Lackey trigger. That's going to do it. Matron can go ahead and grab Sling Gang Lieutenant, and then the other Lackey's trigger resolves, putting in Sling Gang Lieutenant and closing things out. Goblins shores this up 1-1 into a 3rd game. Storm very much enjoy having the play in this matchup. Turn 1 Lackey, so much less threatening when it's a reply to a first turn like Ruby Medallion, for example. Not a lot Goblins can do. Compete with this speed. It's going to be disruption or a fumble or just a really quick game. Goblins can make good use of Thorn of Amethyst. Chalice of the Void also. Sideboard card. And there's that turn 1 Ruby Medallion. So much stronger when you're on the play. Chalice at 0, which feels a little late in general. Like Chalice at 0, usually you want it on the first turn. However, here, all right. Double Ruby Medallion into a Bergie, which gets bounced with Caracas. Not a whole lot can be done there. I don't know that that's actually preferable. May inform Mark's decision on how to use that Caracas. It'll just be used to go after the red. Another Ruby Medallion. And that one, it's not even obvious that that's worth it. Tavern of Souls, able to power out Goblin Lackey, even through a Chalice at 1 if that were the case. Lackey swings, putting in Pile Driver. Haven't seen very much of him lately. We've got a Mog War Marshal. And boarding down the red right now. Plenty of colorless, both in the form of Ancient Tomb and these Ruby Medallions, reducing the colorless requirement. And interesting, not paying the red here for the War Marshal's upkeep. It is lethal either way. Put a push through a little bit of extra damage. Gonna put in a Munitions Expert. And now a double port with Karakas open. And there you go. That's the disruption we're talking about. Chalice at 0, stopping those LED lines. Just so powerful. Luckily, I mean, it's fortunate to not have those LEDs come down before the Chalice when you're on the draw, but this matchup you need as much disruption as you can manage to fit into your 60 for post board, and it showed up and did its job as Goblins takes down what is probably one of its tougher matchups.